Morning. Um, hmm, Wednesday? Yeah, yeah, Wednesday. Cloudy here, but I bet it's still pretty hot out there, even though it's cloudy. I wouldn't be surprised. But we have had some rain, so my garden is pretty thrilled about that. Um, I haven't had to water quite as much, which is a good thing. Morning, Dora. Morning, Susan. Yeah, I'm not I really try with the garden for a while, and then I kind of give up. This year I got started a little later, so I actually feel like I'm making more of an effort later in the season than maybe I would have. But we'll see come August. August is usually when everything just, yeah, I'm done. No more watering, no more pulling weeds. It's pretty much everybody, every plant for himself out there. But we'll see. I mean, this has been a weird year, so maybe things will be different, or I'll feel differently about it. Um, I feel kind of bad because my garden is. I have kind of a big space for it, but I really never got it all cleared out this year. So I have two plots that are planted, and then everything else I just kind of weed whacked, and I probably should cover it up with something. I have some cardboard around here, but I don't know. Again, we'll just see. Maybe it's just a kind of a fallow year for the garden. Um, so that's. I try to remind myself that it's you get a shot at it every year, right? Every year, the plants, the weeds die back, the vines die back, and if you don't do a great job clearing them out this year, there's always next year. Maybe next year you'll be more motivated and get started earlier and stay at it more consistently. I keep hoping that will be the case for me, um, but who knows? Um, it really is. It's like everything else. It's consistency, right? If you don't stick with it, you're going to have a mess, and it's going to take you, a day or two to get it sorted, and then you'll be so sick of it you'll never want to do it again. So I keep learning that lesson over and over, pretty much with everything in your life, and I'm sure you do as well. Um, so the problem, I guess, is that we only have so many hours in a day. So you have to prioritize, right? Which things are important to you? Which things do you need to really work on getting done? And if things aren't important, it's okay, right? You don't have to care about everything. You don't have to put all of your effort into everything. Morning, Barbara and Ruth. One thing that I've been doing more of lately is getting other people to do things for me, which is which is pretty great. I was never I was never able to do that, right? That's certainly not how I was raised. That you should do everything for yourself, and if you don't do it for yourself, then you're just lazy and probably weak, and also um, a bad person. So just do it yourself. But the consequence of that was, that things never got done, right? Um, my dad had a list as long as his arm of things that he needed to get done. Um, in fact, I remember growing up, we lived in an old house with a lot of bathrooms, and usually there were only a couple that were working at any given time. because my dad had projects to do to fix the other ones. And one in particular in the living room, above the living room was where the bathroom was. So the ceiling was out. There was a big hole in the ceiling where my dad had taken it out to work on the pipes and get it going. Um, and it was a long time, just a hole in the ceiling. I remember my mom sort of being quite worried about that. And it wasn't until I got married, um, and I wanted to get married at the house, that my dad decided he better get it done. And at that point, he actually did have someone do the work for him. But um, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you are feeling like you can't get everything done, get some help. There are a lot of people who are willing to help, either paid help or just free help. There's a lot of uh, people, that could use the work. So if you have um, the ability to uh, pay someone to do something for you, don't feel like you can't or you shouldn't. It's a great way to, help other people, um, and help yourself at the same time, right? Um, so that would be ideal. Like if I could find someone to do my gardening for me, I would love that. I would love to have a gardener. I remember growing up, my dad had a good friend, um, who was just one of these guys who loved to help other people. And he would, I guess he sold his house and moved into like a condo or something. He was an old guy and he was bored. So he would go to his friends' houses and do things at their house for them. He liked to do yard work. So he would do yard work out at our house. And that was really enjoyable. So maybe you're lucky. Maybe you know somebody like that who is just sitting around bored, wish they had something to do. I want someone like that to come to my house, do my yard. But I don't know anyone like that, so that's that's okay. All right. So maybe that's a good yoga theme today. Um, Not doing everything for yourself. Um, don't feel like you can't reach out for help. And don't feel like you have to do everything, right? It's not a competition to see who can do the most or who can suffer the longest or work the hardest or accumulate the most, you know. I think sometimes we get the impression that's what our life is. Um, but it really isn't. I mean, that's, in yoga terms, we talk about that a lot, that um, our earthly, worldly occupations are simply in support of our spiritual ones. So um, yoga is very practical, and it says, don't sit around and think that people are going to support you, right? You can't just sit in a room and meditate and expect things to happen, right? You have to have that support, that material support for yourself. But remember what it's in service of, right? In service of something greater, something bigger. Um, and in yoga terms, we talk about these stages of life. So there is um, the student phase, which is, we understand what that is. It's when you're a child and when you are learning, right? You're learning everything that you need to know for your life. Um, so your student phase, you can have some student phase throughout your life, right? But the main part is usually, the beginning, right? And then once we've learned these things, we move into what they call the householder stage. So householder stage, most of us stay there for a long time. That's when we are establishing ourselves professionally, um, financially. we may be starting a household, right? Having a family. That's a very big part of our life. And all of these things are part of our yoga journey and our spiritual journey because we learn so much, right? So we talk about um, the world being our, um, well, they call it, they were calling it gymnasium, right? So you could think of it as a gymnasium where we are training. All of these things are training for us. Dealing with people in relationships, professional relationships, personal relationships, raising children, all of these things are spiritual um, tests, right? I mean, they are tests of our ability to cope, our ability to um, move through these challenges. Um, we are educating ourselves, we are refining our spiritual self through these tasks. And then when we get to the end, um, towards the end, we may loosen our grasp on some of that. So you move into something in between there, which is kind of the renunciate, right? They renunciate, sort of giving up, like renouncing. So in our culture, that area is a little grayer, but in India, for example, where traditionally people all live together in a home, you'd be a householder until your children started getting married and bringing their children to live with you. And then you're sort of naturally turning things over to them. So they might take over more of the household tasks and responsibilities, freeing you up to be more um, less occupied with that, more occupied with maybe some spiritual things. Um, we don't have that as much. Most of us stay as a householder most of maybe our entire life. I mean, we don't really have that system. We're pretty much responsible for our day-to-day upkeep for a good long time. And then the last step, which is where you move into, you really move into. So uh, it is a traditional thing, and I won't say that people in India do it all the time, but it does still happen where people at some point in their life, in their late, 70s or something like that, they might move into a spiritual community or start their own spiritual community where um, they really are done with all that stuff. They are not interested in pursuing those things. Um, they are focusing full time on their spiritual development and working on that. So um, those those things are a little different for us. But I do think, as a culture, and you know, we do frequently as we age, we get more interested in spiritual things, and it may be more of a interest, more of an occupation for us. And if we're lucky enough to be able to retire and not have to worry about working um, every day, we have more time for that. Um, and I think in our culture, people they might think of it more as like self development than maybe spiritual development. But it kind of works out to be the same thing. They're taking better care of their health, they're taking better care of, their mental health as well, and trying to kind of put all the pieces together at the end of the day. Um, so those things are, again, like you got to choose what's important and what you're going to put your effort towards. At every stage of your life, that may be different, a different uh, choice, um, different priorities, and that's very appropriate. Right? It would be very strange if today everything that you thought was important was the same things that you thought 20 years ago or 20 years from now. Um, we're changing all the time. Our interests change, our priorities change, our responsibilities will then change as well. Um, So be open to that. Be open to um, letting things change kind of naturally. Um, I know my own, and I use my dad for an example so much because my mom died when I was 20, 22. Um, so I never really knew her as an older person. Um, my grandmothers, I knew my grandmothers. My one grandmother lived with us for a long time. So, but again, I was young, and I don't think I really got to know her, or really paid that much attention to um, what she was going through. Right? She was just my grandma. It wasn't until I spent time with my dad, um, and he was living here with us, that I really paid attention to what that meant. That idea of getting older and how that changes how we do things. Um, he definitely changed a lot as he got older. Um, his he became easier, certainly easier to live with, I think, than he was when he was a younger guy. I think that lightening of responsibilities was good for him. I think he felt comfortable with that. I think for some people they don't. Some people it it robs them of something that they felt very personal, right? So that's 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 the challenge, is to not identify ourselves with our responsibilities and our priorities. Um, they are not who we are. So as they change, we aren't losing anything. We're simply redirecting our focus. Um, so I guess, it's change again, right? That's probably the big message all the time is be ready for the change. And know that the change, I mean, sometimes the change comes from outside. Right? Something will happen and all of a sudden the world is different. But a lot of times the change is initiated within, even though you may feel like you don't see that. You think it's, oh, you know, I'm getting old now, I got to do this. Well, that may be so, but it may also be something that is coming up from within, saying, hey, pay attention to this. You need to change a little. Um, and those type of changes, we've talked about this before, those are the best changes, right? They're the ones that we can stick with the easiest. Um, they uh, they really they're the ones definitely we want to listen to because we're ready. We're ready for that change to happen. Um, that's not to say we can't get used to the other changes, right? We're getting used to this, right? Being at home, not being able to do all the things that we've done most of our life. But we're we're managing. We are accommodating. Um, we may not love it, but it is what it is. So we are going to do what we need to do. Um, so be ready. You know, um, accept the changes when they come. See what you can do with them. If you don't like something about them, put your own spin on it. Figure out what do you need to do to make it more acceptable, to make it more uh, workable for you. Um, as we talk about in yoga, all of these things are conditional, right? Just like the poses, everything needs to work within your framework. Right? So your life, your body is going to be a little different than everybody else's. And it's going to need a little different. Like you're going to want to tweak whatever it comes along and make it work for you. Um, and that's what we're doing here with yoga. We're trying to give ourselves the tools to do that, so that we're feel, you know, good, like we can move through the changes without too much trouble. All right. So, not trying to do everything. Um, being willing to let go and to accommodate changes. Let's do our asana with that in mind. Um, if you feel like there's something you don't want to do today, don't do it. Um, if you feel like, we're holding something too long, or, it's just not working today, something hurts, don't do it. Um, give yourself permission to do things your way today. Maybe forever, but at least for today. All right, so we're sitting up, nice and tall, breathing. Notice anywhere that things are feeling maybe tight, maybe a little cramped today. Sending breath into that space. We're breathing in through the nose and back out through the nose. While I'm thinking about breathing, I just remembered I wanted to say yesterday. So I read an article about breathing with a mask on. And there's a lot of information out there about like, oh, it's bad for you, it's reducing your oxygen or something like that. Okay, that's not true at all. If you are wearing a fabric mask, like a cotton mask or something like that, you're not compromising anything at all. I mean, think about doctors and nurses wear masks all the time. None of them are oxygen deprived. Everything's fine. But what we do frequently do is we shorten our breath. So we stop taking deep breaths. We breathe very shallow. And that's, I think, just a function of, something physically being over the face. And especially if you feel like your mask is fogging up or, just, it's an uncomfortable, I don't know anyone who feels comfortable wearing a mask, right? It's fairly uncomfortable. So if you are wearing a mask, if you're out and you start to feel, notice what you're doing with your breath. If you are starting to shorten the breath, take some time to do some deep breaths. Breathing in, breathing out. What will happen, right, is that people start to do really shallow breathing, and that kind of ramps up your anxiety, right? So you're doing this like short, shallow breath, your body's like, hey, I think something bad's happening. Your breath has changed, right? Or you're getting anxious. What are you getting anxious about? I better start tensing up. I better get ready. Something terrible is going to happen, right? So your breathing then fires that up. So then you start having that feeling of anxiety. So even if there's no reason to feel anxious, you may start to feel anxious. And this has actually happened to me a couple times in the grocery store where I was like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious. I'm like, why? Oh, okay, I'm not breathing. That's a source of anxiety. So take some breaths, take some deep breaths, relax when you're wearing the mask. Try not to make that a source of anxiety to you. And, try not to be out so much that you have to wear it. I mean, I've really been trying to make a list, go to the grocery store, get my stuff, leave, make it a quick trip. And as I told Dave, now it's just shopping. Or I'm sorry, it's buying, not shopping. There's no more shopping, right? We don't browse in the store. We don't look at things. We just shop. We buy. Just get the stuff and go home. Then you can breathe. So think about it. Pay attention to how you're breathing if you have a mask on. I don't know, but my feeling is that we're probably going to have masks around for a good long time. So we're going to need to learn how to breathe with them and how to function with them in our life. Take one more breath. And then chin down toward the chest. Let the head hang here. And then move head around, big circle. One way and then the other. And back to your center. Take a breath in. Lean forward. Move around with the body. One way and then the other. Back up to your seat. Arms wide. Deep breath in. Exhale, hands together. Inhale wide. Exhale, hands together. Inhale. And exhale, bringing hands together. Interlace the fingers. Lift the hands. Gaze up. And then we're bringing arms down by your side. Inhale, lift. Lower. Lift. And lower. Once more, lifting up. Right arm down by your side. Reach across with the left. Switch sides. And back up. Let's lift the shoulders, roll back. And forward. Goalpost arms. Take a deep breath. And then we're just turning the shoulders. Breathe. Back to center. Breath in. Turning to the left. Back to center. Bring the arms behind your back. Interlace the fingers. We're going to set the hands down behind, gaze up. And then fold forward. Breathe. And come on back up. Tabletop. Moving through cat-cow. Inhales and exhales. back to neutral here. Sitting on the heels, child's pose. And let's do rabbit here. So we're going to bring, if the knees are apart, we're bringing them close together, sitting back on the heels, hands behind you. We're going to reach for the sides of the feet or the heels, maybe even the ankles. If we can't reach that far, you could sort of put your fingers underneath, right? So you've got some pressure there. Whatever you can reach back for. We're going to tuck the chin so that the crown of the head, very top part of the head, is resting lightly on the mat. And then we're lifting up the hips, putting a little pressure on the top of the head, not too much, right? And this is what kind of stops us from going too far. This space between the arms and the feet. We can't come much further. So see how that works for you. And if this is really out of reach for you, you could do the same sort of thing, kind of with the hands out in front, right? So you could maybe rest the crown of the head on the hands if you are way up, like if you can't be anywhere close to here. The other possibility is to bring some blocks, right? That just brings the floor up a little closer to you. The main thing is that we want to try to get top of the head resting on something. But if that's not possible, then don't worry about it, right? Tucking the chin for some people is difficult if you don't have a lot of neck flexibility. You could also just stack the fists and rest the forehead. If that's where you're at today, that's fine. So wherever you are with this, give it a shot. And then just coming back to a regular child's pose. Maybe bring the knees a little wider if you can. Move your way back up. Tabletop, we're going to swing the right leg around. Hands to center, take a breath, and a twist. So turning here, you could hook the elbow, you could stay more upright if you want. Moving back to center. We're going to bring the right hand down by the foot, lifting with the left. Let's switch hands. So now the left hand is down. And you may have this over towards the edge of the mat instead of right next to the foot, just to help you with your balance. Right arm lifts. And then both hands to the mat. And kind of lean forward with this. Stretching into a kind of a mini lizard. And just, again, going as far as you feel comfortable with this. From here, we're going to move into pigeon, like regular pigeon. So you can give this a try. If it's not going to work for you, then don't worry about it. You can just go back to doing lizard some more, or whatever you want to do. You could rest in child's pose. Whatever works for you. So if we're going to do pigeon, we're bringing that right foot across. So we're trying to keep this leg as parallel to the front of the mat as we can. Okay? If that's hard for you, that's a lot of pressure, just bring the foot closer. You can't really see from this. I gotta try. Let's try. I picked the wrong side. The telegenic side. Okay, so we're trying to keep it parallel, but we might bring it in closer if we need to. Just work with this. See what you need to do to make this pose work for you, right? So we're here, we're upright, kind of getting ourselves settled. And then maybe we come down. We could come down onto the arms or all the way down. Or you might just stay here if things are feeling really tight. Your choice. So you can see this is just a version of the supine pigeon that we do. It's just instead of drawing that thigh in close, we're letting our body weight kind of work on that hip area. So this is definitely more intense version of the other. And then make your way kind of back up if you were down. We're going to roll out onto this right side a little and swing the left leg out in front. Catch a hold of that left foot, and we're going to extend it out. So you don't have to straighten it all the way. We're just trying to get that leg back in front. So, making sure that everything is back where it should be after all that. And then we're going to bring this foot on top of, turn again. on top of the leg. So this is the left leg, it's on top of the right. We're going to take a deep breath, lift the arms, and fold forward. Come back up. Okay. Extend the legs long. Breath in and fold forward. Coming back up, you can bend the knees, and then we're going to come forward here into tabletop. Sit back on the heels, child's pose. Make your way back up. This time, left leg comes out in front. We'll have hands together. Take your breath in, and then twisting to the left. Back to center, left hand, down by the foot, right arm lifts. Right arm down by the foot, by the outer edge of the mat, I guess. Find your balance here. Lift the left arm. And then both hands down, moving into your lizard. And then we're going to do pigeon on this side. So we're walking this foot across, resting the leg down. Get this where you need it to be. It can come in closer if you feel like you need that. Finding how you are comfortable here, and then maybe staying here or coming down, your choice. See what works. You can always, if you have a block, kind of stick it under that left hip. If you feel like you're way up in the air, Sometimes that feels a little insecure, so that block can help keep you steady here. What you don't want to do is to be tilted, right? So if one side is down, one side is up, think about everything being square to the front. Even if you are up in the air a little bit, that's okay, right? That block can help, or you could just be up in the air, that's fine. Then we're gonna kind of roll onto that left side a little, swing the right leg around. Out in front, extend. And then bring that right leg on top. Deep breath in and fold forward. One back up. Both legs out in front. Deep breath in, fold forward. And bend the knees. Soles of the feet to the mat. Let's bring the soles of the feet together, sitting up tall, leaning forward here. And moving back up. We're gonna lower down onto the floor. I think I'm too close. I'm gonna turn around. This mat has scooted up again. I'll hit my head. All right, lowering down or rocking back. Get comfortable. Take a few breaths. And then we're going to bring both knees into the chest. Rock a little side to side. Arms to a T or goalpost arms. Lower both knees over to the right. And then coming to center and moving left. Back to center. Extend the legs straight up. Arms by your side. And then when you're ready, lowering down however you want, um, and getting comfortable on your mat for Shavasana, however you want to do that today. Breathe, relax. Let the body sink down onto the mat. Notice your breath. Make that breath deep and even. So as we move through different stages of our life, our practice may change with that as well. So if you think about your practice, it's very much the same kind of progression, right? We begin with the learning. So the student part, we're learning the poses, we're learning some of the information. But we've only just, scratched the surface of what there is. We may have come to yoga thinking it was stretching and, a little exercise, which it is. But as we stay and keep moving, we notice that maybe there's more to it than that. So then we move into the householders, which might be more of a stage of competence where we feel like we have a pretty good grasp of the poses and some of the philosophy, and we sort of know where we're going. And the householder stage is kind of, I would say, kind of the meat and potatoes of your practice, right? Where you're just working through this, you're sticking with it, and just coming up, showing up to your mat as often as you can, and just working it. Kind of like a job, right? It's not unlike a job, right? We're working for our physical and spiritual well-being, right? And then as we get even further along in the practice, we may be more interested in the more subtle parts of it. Maybe we're getting interested in meditation. Maybe we are, I think pranayama is super cool, right? So we're moving deeper layers of this yoga practice. And then, working towards that end goal, which is probably comparable to that idea of giving everything up and moving into a spiritual practice. So, and as we move through our life, that may be kind of how we're going. So, what is so great about yoga is you could start it, as a very athletic teenager, 20-year-old, and really work that aspect of it. And then as you get older and you have maybe less time and your physical abilities are just not as strong, you're moving less into asana and more into some other things. And then as you get even older, your asana practice may change, a good deal, right? Maybe we have some injuries to deal with. Maybe we have some physical limitations. But that doesn't have to impact your practice. It may limit some of the asana that you can do, but your practice continues. We start focusing on the other parts that don't have so much to do with asana. We work on those, and they are just as important, if not really more so. I mean, if you want to go by yoga texts, they are actually much more so important. We give equal weight to the 8 limbs. That means asana, yamas and niyamas. All of these things have the same wait, they're all paths to where we're going. Um, and it's actually what I have read is that as you get more advanced, more spiritually on the path, your need for asana is less. Um, you actually, your body will be more flexible, will be more strong and flexible just by itself. I don't know if I believe that 100%. Sometimes I think that's just a reason why you see some of these like old yoga masters and they're all like, well, you don't even do asana anymore. What are you doing? And they're like, oh, I don't need to do that. I'm flexible already. Maybe so. That could be true. Maybe, 40, 50 years of doing asana is enough. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I still need asana. So I'm going to keep working asana as long as my body will allow me. But my practice has changed significantly in the years from when I began to now. So again, accept those changes. Don't fight them. Um, Move with them and make the most of them. When you're ready, then beginning to move fingers and toes and hands and feet. You might stretch a little and then making your way up to a seat. Let's bring hands together. Breath in and out. Thank you for taking time this morning to do some yoga, to come to your mat and share it with everyone here. I hope you have a really good day. Namaste. Thank you. I hope you have a good Wednesday. Stay cool. Um, Enjoy the weather as much as you can. Um, and see today what you can do that isn't maybe let's say um, find something that you can let go of, right? Find something that has been troubling you, um, and see if you can resolve it one way or another. Right? Something that you feel like you need to do, or you haven't been able to get around to um, decide and make a final, decision about this. Either get it done. If you have time, get it done. Tell someone else to do it, or pay someone to do it. Maybe both. My kids actually have been known to pay each other for chores, which is painful to me. I've never paid my kids for chores in my life because, do some chores. You live in the house, do some chores. Um, but consequently, not they don't do a lot of chores, right? Because they don't really care. They're a bunch of hogs. They'll just live. They don't care. They'll do anything. But there have been jobs that my son, especially my older son, he'll pay my younger son to, I don't know, like walk the dog for him, or I don't know, he had to take the trash out once or get something. I don't know. My son will just do stuff for him. He'll and So he picks up odd jobs around the house from the other people that live here. So maybe you have someone in your house like that who would be happy to take $10 to finish whatever it is that you don't want to finish. Um, so see what you can do. Kids, if you got children, grandkids, they're all great candidates for this. They love, until they're old enough to have a real job, they love some cash. They'll do anything. All right. Well, have a good Wednesday, and I'll be back tomorrow.